Liberal press. I was curious. We have two questions. First one is this 30-point cloak of invisibility you mentioned in your last video. I'm hoping the workers are unionized. The second question is a little more policy-based. You've gained more seats in the Senate. We're curious, will you be looking at Mr. Reid to maybe pass a budget, or are you going to continue with the no-pass budget keep shell that was put in place in 2009 game going on because of the do-nothing Senate? Is this the plan you're pushing?
Let's talk about the Senate first. As virtual President of the United States, I'm responsible for the executive branch of the government, and I have no power and I have no influence, no legal influence over the legislative branch.
As a leader of your party, sir.
As the leader of my party, I'm answering your question. I have no authority over the legislative branch. I am not supposed to have any authority over the legislative branch, and I don't want any authority over the legislative branch. The President is the executive. I think everybody understands how this works. So if there's a problem with the Senate, and there is a critical problem with the Senate, the solution to the problem of the Senate is for the people of the United States of America to decide whether or not they want a Senate that functions or not. I don't have any authority to make any difference opinion on this. I have a little booklet here in my pocket. It's called the Constitution of the United States. It's really remarkable. It's very informative. It says exactly what I can do and what I cannot do. And talking about or influencing what happens in the Senate is one of the things that I cannot do. Now, my virtual Vice President, Mr. Boring, is able to be breaking ties in the case where we have a 50-50 vote in the virtual Senate, but other than that, that is the limit of my authority. Needless to say, as the executive officer of the United States of America, I think this country deserves a budget. I think that's not too much to ask for the greatest people in the world. Next question. Yes, sir.
President Whittle, it seems to me that the southern border has been left open on purpose, and it also seems to the average American that the drones in the sky and the threat work that is afoot, you're either keeping us in anticipation of an event or keeping us frantic to start with. Can you speak to that?
Well, first I'll talk about the drones and then I'll talk about the border. You will recall that the very first thing I did as President of the United States was issue Executive Order 4942, which invalidated every single previous executive order of the United States. The only executive order I have ever issued or ever will issue was an executive order that voided every single prior executive order of the United States. Executive orders are tyranny. Executive orders have no place in a republic. There is nothing in the Constitution that talks about executive orders, and the entire idea of executive order is fiat. It's rule by fiat. It's a commandment. It's circumventing the Congress. So the only executive order that I passed was that, first of all previous executive orders were currently voided in their entirety legally, and secondly, I think it would be a really, really fine idea to make an amendment to the Constitution that says these things are illegal. You know what, actually I take that back. I withdraw what I just said. You don't have to make an amendment to the Constitution. It's already there. Constitution exists. It's not in the Constitution, so there are no executive orders. They're illegal. They're illegal on the face, whether Republican issues one or Democrat issues one. They're illegal on their face. If a policy is not worth putting past the people's representatives, then it does not deserve to take place in this country as I understand these documents. So that's the executive order issue, and the drone issue and the strikes issue. Now, to the border. We have the only unprotected border on the face of planet Earth. And people who have benefited from this unprotected border have told you for 50 years now that this is a sign of our moral advancement and the essential idea of America and what a swell people we are because we don't protect our own border. But let me say one thing about illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is not just a slap in the face, but it is a spit in the eye of every legal immigrant who throughout the course of history and all around the world has stood in line and spent a fortune of their money, 10 years of their time, and waited to do the right thing to come to this country so that they could live here and become new people. E pluribus unum, out of many one. My grandfather came here from Great Britain in 1915, and if I'm standing next to a fellow whose grandfather came here from Mexico in 1915, it's a remarkable thought. My grandfather and his grandfather have more in common with each other than they do with the English people and the Mexican people they left behind. Because all of these people came here to become Americans. The great problem with this wave of, many problems with the wave of immigration, illegal immigration, is these people are not coming here to be Americans. This entire idea of La Raza and reconquering is not the sound of people who come here to be Americans. That's why people are so upset. But if your entire purpose for coming to America as an immigrant is to flee lawlessness, economic corruption, or political corruption, if your entire reason for coming here is to come to a land of law, does it make sense that the first thing you do is break the law? Aren't you bringing with you every bit of poison that you've been running away from this whole time? It simply doesn't make sense, and I will not tolerate it. We are going to have a protected border like every other country on the face of this earth. And we have always been a home to immigrants, and we will continue to be a home to immigrants. And when I say a home to immigrants, I mean people from all around the world, not just from Mexico. And I mean people who have ideas and intelligence and education and capital, not just people who can't read and write. We have room for them too. But I am talking about making America the place where every successful, hardworking person wants to come. And successful, hardworking, law-abiding people will go through the process. I am 100% behind rapidly streamlining legal immigration for immigrants from all around the world. I want the best minds on the planet. I want the hardest working people on the planet. And the only thing I would do if I had dictatorial powers is I'd make sure that for every new hardworking immigrant we took in, we got to expel a Berkeley law professor. Because that we would be in business. Next question, yes ma'am.
Mr. Virtual President, in 1979, the Ayatollah Khomeini seized power in Iran and made life for women in Iran a hell on earth. And it also birthed Hezbollah, the party of God. Now flash forward to today with the Middle East. And we see in Egypt, Tunisia, most of Northern Africa, Mali, Sudan, and other places we probably will be finding out from now, the same brand, but worse than the Ayatollah. What do you plan to do? Do you think that they are going to spawn something the opposite of Hezbollah, or the same, or worse?
That is a profoundly good and interesting question, and it deserves a philosophical rather than a political answer. Many people in America will have you believe that what Islam despises about America is its strength, its military power, its ability to put its footprint, its presence in the Middle East. That's utterly untrue. And the reason I know it's untrue is that I don't listen to useful idiots. I listen to what the Islamists say to themselves. They don't keep this a secret. None of them ever do, by the way. Adolf Hitler was never a secret about what he wanted to do. Mussolini, all these people are very straightforward. Islamists hate, what they hate about America is its licentiousness. What they hate about America is its depravity. And what they hate about America is they think we have a suicide wish and they want to help us along with it so they can come and take all of our stuff. Now, as a person dedicated to freedom, I am 100% behind the idea that an American citizen should be able to do or say whatever they darn well want to, but culturally, when we have people who will not stand up for what this country believes in, they are perfectly willing to believe that we don't believe in ourselves, and of course they believe that they can defeat us.
What would you do in regards to recent negotiation where we renounce both?
The missile defense thing, that's the part I really wanted to deal with. In my opinion, in my reading of history, I can say this with some confidence, I think. I don't believe there is a braver people on the face of the earth than the Poles. In my opinion, they have the most magnificent courage of any group of people on the face of the earth. And when the Polish people decided to have a missile defense installation designed to protect them from Middle Eastern rogue states, but also from the former Soviet Union, which really isn't that former when you get right down to their policies, what they did was, they were people who lived in a shadow of a giant that stood over them their entire history, and they voted. They made a decision to ally themselves with people on the far side of the world because they thought they could count on us and they thought that they could depend on us to be a spokesperson for the things we claim to believe, which is freedom. And freedom means defense from totalitarianism and Russian aggression and Russian brutality, which has ruled their lives for centuries. That was one of the most courageous political decisions I've ever seen with my own eyes. And for the previous administration to sell those people out on the anniversary of the invasion of Poland by the Nazis, by the way. You'd know that if you read any history. But it was simply the most egregious sellout. I've never been more ashamed of myself as an American in my life, which is why immediately upon taking the oath of office, I reinstalled those missile systems. I have authorized the United States Defense Department to increase the number of Aegis-class destroyers, frigates, and cruisers because an Aegis-class destroyer using the Standard 3 missile is capable of missile defense. And to people who say that, well, this missile has a 50% kill ratio or a 25% kill ratio on an incoming warhead, I said, that's fine, I'll send 200 missiles with a 50% kill ratio. We're talking about defending this country. We don't spend this money for nothing. It is absolutely essential. And I want somebody to make the case how a purely defensive system is immoral. I want somebody to make the case how I am talking about a shield, not a sword. make the case that there's something wrong with building a shield to protect ourselves from incoming nuclear warheads and the blackmail that ensues. You can't make that case. It was a criminal betrayal of the Polish people to do what we did to them, and I am doing my level best to restore their confidence, but it will not take just my administration. It's going to take 100 years to rebuild the breach of faith that we made with those magnificent people, which is why my first overseas visit was to Poland. Because I understand what these people have been through, and I understand the risk they took to stand beside us, and if we don't take care of our allies, we don't deserve allies. Next question. Yes, sir.
Speaking of allies, what would be your attitude towards Israel's right to defend itself against its enemy?
I saw a video, you may have seen these before, of an orca, a great white, a killer whale, pursuing seals. And the orcas would drive the seals up onto the beach. They'd give them nowhere to go, and the seals would go up on the beach, and then the orcas would power up there and bite that seal in half. And I saw this one video where this orca did this. And it went right up on the beach, and the seal, and it clamped its jaws, and the seal was a few inches away. And just as the orca couldn't move any further, and the seal knew it was safe, the seal turned around and bit that orca on the nose. Now my question to you is, does anybody think that that seal didn't have a right to bite that killer whale on the nose? When you see wildlife pictures of lions going after gazelles in the African savannah, and you see them kicking and goring or using their horns, does anybody think that animal doesn't have a right to defend itself? It should simply lie on its back, show its neck to the lion, and allow itself to become somebody's dinner. Nobody for a second believes these things. It's so immediately obvious throughout all the world that the primary right of all people and cultures is the right to defend yourself. How can anybody say it's the job of the gazelle to be dinner for the lion? Nobody believes this. Everybody roots for the gazelle. So, how is it that the only Western country in the Middle East, the only place where the values that we propose are in place, is somehow the bad guy? There's only two places in the entire world, well, three, where Arabs can vote, well, two in the Middle East where Arabs can vote in free and fair elections. One of them is Israel, and the other, by the way, is Iraq. So, how is it that Israel is the bad guy? You know, you can clear all the politics and all the clutter away, but all you really need to know about the relationship of Israel to the Palestinians is this. If a Islamic suicide bomber detonates a vest in a square and kills 50 people, the survivors will be taken to an Israeli hospital, treated by Israeli doctors in the order of their severity, which means that the people who have just been murdered by these savages are now fighting to save the lives of the people that just tried to kill them, because of the ethics and the decency and the fundamental morality of the Israeli people. Now, I don't see how anybody can question this. I don't. It's utter mystery to me. But there it is. So somehow Israel's portrayed as being the bad guy, and everybody knows that they're not. It's just a game that we've been playing forever. We just agree to it. We agree to agree. But the one thing I will say is this. If you want to have a question, an actual question about who is the actual moral power in the Middle East, the Palestinians or the Israelis, every single piece of evidence you see shows that any time the Palestinians have any operational capability at all, they deploy it against Israel. Same for Syria, same for Hezbollah. The second they have rockets, they launch them. The second they have the means to hurt the Israelis, they hurt them. Israel probably has, well, I happen, as virtual president, I happen to know the exact number, but it's in the ballpark of 300 nuclear weapons. Israel could absolutely vaporize every single one of its enemies overnight, completely secure its future and its success, and what, would they be demonized? They're demonized anyway. Israel has the ability to annihilate its enemies, and it doesn't. The instant Israel's enemies have any power to hurt Israel, they use it. I know what side I'm on. I'm on the side of decency, civilization, morality, and justice. And there's only one place in the Middle East where you see that, and that's the state of Israel. That's why I try my very best to repair the damage that was done by the previous administration. Any more questions?